In terms of building a brand, if you're the kind of advertiser spending $20 a day on ads, the idea of building a brand to you may sound really amorphous, but it is really important because ultimately users are looking for trust online. And with more and more AI and more competing viewpoints, I'll put it, around the world, like trust is eroding online. And so if you have, the perfect scented candle that someone's looking for, but they see your ad next to a well-established brand or retailer they recognize, they're gonna go for that retailer instead.
Let's say if I come to you and say that Google ad is not working and maybe I have some issues with the audience targeting. So where do you start when you have to diagnose that, yes, this is where you're lacking?
Or Google makes money when people click on ads. So as much as people say, oh, Google's trying to cheat us, and no, Google's so evil, like, no, Google just wants to make money. So you can work with Google, so you make money too. Give Google great creative that people click on, so Google makes money and you make money.
Okay. Hi, Jill. Welcome to the 10x Marketer podcast. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself and then let's get started with the questions.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Jill Saskin Gales, and I'm a Google Ads coach, an ex-Googler, and the founder of the Inside Google Ads course, podcast, and now book. I'm obsessed with Google Ads. I'm a content creator and speaker, and I just love teaching practitioners of all levels about all things Google Ads.
Awesome. So let's start with your new book that is on audience targeting. What made you write a book and what is it going to cover? All right, awesome.
What on earth did make me want to write a book, right? It actually started in 2022. I had just launched my Inside Google Ads course. And as part of that course, I had just recorded the lesson about audience targeting. And when I finished recording that lesson, it was kind of 15 to 20 minutes, which is longer than lessons normally are. And I just felt like I had so much more to say. So I sat down one evening, I started writing, and before I knew it, I had 30 pages. And I was like, yes, this is going to be my first book. And then shortly after that, I got pregnant with my second child. Went on maternity leave, life happened. So I came back to this book in late 2025, started again, wrote it, and just really wanted to use this as an opportunity to share with practitioners of all levels, not just what is audience targeting and what are the capabilities, but how to think about how to make this work for your business, how to understand the way Google approaches different audiences, how to put together a holistic strategy, the kind of things that is just too much detail and nuance to share in a LinkedIn post or a blog post.
Understood. So let's start with the topic, the core topic, which is audience targeting. So most people have different strategies, like B2B might have a different strategy, D2C has a different strategy. How do you build the fundamental or core base of your audience targeting before you actually even get into the Google Ads dashboard? So as a business, what should be your background study or the before Google's ad study so that you have a clear roadmap, like these are my audience, this is how I want to target them?
Absolutely. Before you get into the tactics of which audiences I should select or which campaign types, there are really two things you need to very clearly define. And that is, what is your offer and who would be interested in it? So for example, let's think of, I don't know, Google Ads courses, okay? There are many different kinds of audiences who might be interested in that. Maybe it is business owners, maybe it is advanced practitioners, maybe it is marketing agency employees. So those could be all different kinds of audiences you want to reach. And then there's also your offer itself. Is this, a 1 hour masterclass? Is this a 20-hour long, super in-depth thing? Is it beginner level? Is it advanced level? So these are the two pieces you need to put together to then figure out what kinds of targeting will make most sense to reach people looking for that offer and to reach people who match that audience. And the tools we have in Google Ads to do that are content targeting and audience targeting. So with content targeting, that's keywords, topics, and placements. So maybe people searching for Google Ads course, people browsing websites about Google Ads, people watching Google Ads tutorials on YouTube. Those are all different content targeting ways to reach people interested in the offer. Then with audience targeting, we have the capability to reach business owners or Google Ads practitioners or people who work at agencies. So it's really two complementary types of targeting you can use to reach that perfect person, ideally those perfect people who are most likely to become customers. So keywords and content targeting, I feel like, is something all Google Ads practitioners have some level of understanding of how keywords work. But I saw in my work, both at Google for 6 years and then in my coaching practice for the last 4 years, that audience targeting was an area of Google Ads that people didn't really understand. And so that's why I decided to focus there for the book.
Yeah, so I think for a very long time, Google or Google Ads has all been about keywords and keyword targeting, and people never focused on who is searching those keywords and can I really define, like, if he's searching, then I should show my key results. If the particular audience type is searching, then I should not show my results. So it is clearly a shift from keyword based targeting to the audience targeting, and maybe people are still trying to adapt to that. Now there's something like moment of convergence, like right now what is happening is AI is much more advanced, algorithm is much more advanced, and there are moments when I want to convert, and maybe at that moment I'll see five new people coming and showing me the ad because they have seen me in market or something. So let's talk about different categories of audience that you can target, like in market audience, cold audience, warm audience, maybe remarketing audience, if you can bifurcate that for my audience, if you can.
Absolutely. And that kind of the first place we go in the book. So there's 4 kinds of audience targeting available in Google Ads. And so the first one is what I call the Google audiences. It's the ones where you just check a box and you can target it. So the 4 types of Google audiences, you mentioned some of them. There's detailed demographics, affinity segments, in-market segments, and life event segments. And certain ones are compatible in certain places, but those are the Google audiences. And I would say those are the easiest to use.
Mhm.
The next kind is those remarketing lists, which Google now calls your data segments. And there are 4 kinds of your data segments. You can target people based on their interaction with your website or app. You can target people based on their interaction with your Google content, so things like your YouTube or your Google Engaged audience. You can target people based on personally identifiable information that you have that you then share with Google. So that would be something like customer match, for example. And
Mhm.
then let me think for a moment. I'm forgetting one. Website. Oh, I lumped website and app together. Website, app, Google content, and then personally identifiable data. So those are the 4 kinds of your data segments. Then the third piece is something that's really unique to Google. Well, Microsoft does it too because they copy Google, but really pretty unique to Google Ads. And that is custom audiences. And
Mhm.
so that's where you have custom segments, custom interests, combined segments, layering different audiences together, building your own audiences. There's been a lot of change in that space in the last year or two. So I spent a lot of time in the book talking about that. And then the fourth category is all the automated targeting, which you alluded to. Things like lookalike segments, optimized targeting, audience signals, search themes, etc. So those are the 4 broad buckets of audience targeting: Google's data, your data, custom data, and then the automated targeting. And within each, lots of options available.
Understood. So let's go into detail of affinity segments. Uh, are there any specific strategies people can use to target the affinity segment audience? Because it looks like a very broader segment, and there might be some filtration techniques that can help you refine your particular affinity segments. And sometimes even I struggle with that, like actually finding out if this is the audience I should target.
Absolutely. Affinity segments are definitely a broader kind of audience targeting, so they tend to work well for prospecting audiences. And
Mm-hmm.
just in case people aren't aware, affinity segments is targeting people based on their interests and hobbies. So it's not in market like they're currently looking for a product or service. It's not a life event where they're currently going through a transition. It's targeting based on interests. And there are about 150 different affinity segments you can target within Google Ads. You can use affinity segments with search, shopping, display, demand gen, video, as well as performance max audience segments, audience signals, and you can exclude them as well. So some good ways to use affinity segments are when you want to reach people who maybe don't have a clearly defined in-market audience, or if you want to test some different kinds of messaging in front of different groups. I'll give you some examples of some affinity segments. For example, there's an affinity segment for green living enthusiasts. So let's say that you're selling some kind of non-toxic household cleaner, right? Or maybe you're selling organic dog food or organic children's food, rather than trying to target people in market for dog food or people in market for children's food or people in market for cleaning products. You could do that, but that would include everyone, not
Yep.
just the people who would specifically be interested in something organic or non-toxic. So I call it a way to zig, is to choose an affinity segment like green living enthusiasts and then target that audience with your non-toxic cleaning products or your vegan organic dog food, because there's a interesting compatibility there with the ethos of your brand that may actually resonate better.
Okay,
Another
so
example I
let's.
can share, actually, from when I worked at Google, there was a company that sold a luxury product. We'll say, for argument's sake, that they sold luxury shoes, and they decided to run a YouTube campaign. And for one campaign, they targeted the in-market segment for shoes, people currently market for shoes. And for the other one, they targeted the affinity segment of luxury shoppers. So people who just generally like to buy luxury things. And this luxury shoe company found that actually the video campaign that targeted luxury shoppers performed better than the video campaign that targeted people in market for shoes.
Understood. So other part of this question that I have is this possible within Google Ads to actually build layers of audience? Let's say the same company that want to target people who are in market for shoes and want to build a layer on top of that of luxury shoppers. So luxury shopper in market for shoes. Is there a way to define or refine that kind of audience within Google Ads, and what is the right way to do it?
There is a way to define that, but it's slipping. So the way to do that in Google Ads is called a combined segment, and that's where you
Mm-hmm,
can stack or layer audiences together using and. So
mm-hmm,
in market for shoes and luxury shopper creates like a Venn diagram, and they have to meet both of those requirements.
mm-hmm,
So the only way to do that in Google Ads is with a combined segment, and
mm-hmm.
combined segments are now only compatible with search campaigns and display campaigns. So
Okay.
you used to be able to use combined segments in video. You can't
Mm-hmm,
anymore. You used to be able to use them in discovery, which is the precursor to demand gen, and you can't anymore. So it
mm-hmm,
makes audience stacking and layering more difficult than it used to be. And so, again, I go into detail about that in the book, and then I share my response to that, which is something I call nonlinear targeting,
mm-hmm.
finding other ways to reach your target audience beyond just trying to go and this and that and that and that all the way down to the most specific thing, because it's just not the way the systems work anymore. People who use meta ads know same things happening over there. You used to do these perfectly sculpted 20-layer audiences on meta, and now it's just
Mm-hmm.
like go broad. So in Google Ads, I'm not saying go broad, but that combined segment is just not as available as it used to be.
Understood. So I think other part is that it is not that effective also. Even if you're using it on search, there may be a lot of people who come to you who ideally you think you have never targeted. Like there's a lot of slippers, the filters are not correct. Maybe they don't have the like right ability, or Google intentionally slips across so that it can get more clicks and see whether your ad is really performing for that particular target audience. So that's slightly difficult for you to like maintain those signals on consistent basis and get the right figuring out the audience. Now the other part is which is significantly important is how do you actually filter out audience in different funnel stages? So people who are maybe looking at the prospecting stage should not be able to see the ad that is more designed for conversion and actually getting you converted. Then you have a lot of ads that are directly running the sales campaign. So they don't have any prospecting, they have never done any branding. They will straight away go and start selling, or maybe start running the ad that's objective is to say actually run the sales campaign. How do you actually get the audience if you have not done the branding in the right manner? And is it effective as a brand if you straight away go to the sales campaign and never done any branding or prospecting in your campaigns?
There's a few different questions to unpack in there. So the first I'll say, while you can set up campaigns to really include and exclude and only show prospecting this and next they only see that. For example, you can do it with various remarketing setups. You can do it with ad sequencing and video. I wouldn't recommend that because it's just not the way real people customer journeys
Yeah,
work.
sure.
Google has this great graphic where they show, the user starts here, and they go zigzag up and down and in and out and front and back and all around, and then eventually somehow end up at a purchase. So that's the first thing I'll say to that part. In terms of building a brand, if you're the kind of advertiser spending $20 a day on ads, the idea of building a brand to you may sound really amorphous,
Yeah.
but it is really important because ultimately users are looking for trust online. And with more and more AI and more competing viewpoints, I'll put it, around the world, like, trust is eroding online. And so if you have, the perfect scented candle that someone's looking for, but they see your ad next to a well-established brand or retailer they recognize, they're going to go for that retailer instead.
Yeah.
So brand building doesn't have to mean let's spend $1 million on YouTube and have no results from it. No. But it does mean, having messaging and information to put in front of users who may not be actively searching, to make them aware that you have something that can help them. Like, I'll give you an example of this from the home services category.
Mhm.
There are a few agencies that I mentor who specialize in home services business, like renovations and flooring and landscaping and things like that. And so something they've been doing with their clients that's working really well is during the summertime, when there's a ton of search demand for landscaping or pool installation or whatever, we just search campaigns. Boom. But then once fall comes around into the off season where it's winter, people aren't searching for pool installation or landscaping, in the same way during the
Yeah.
winter. So there, a few of these different advertisers have started to leverage demand gen campaigns and targeting them using audience targeting to homeowners, to people who are interested in luxury travel, for example, which travel has nothing to do with landscaping or a pool. But if someone is traveling to luxury destinations during the winter and they're a homeowner, for example, that might be the right kind of audience who, come spring, will be looking for pool installation or landscaping or things like that. And so that's been a highly effective way to keep lead generation active in the off season by considering the person who is searching and not just what they're typing into Google. And so I would count that as brand building because you're putting your business and your offer in front of people who aren't actively searching, making them aware that you can help solve their problem.
Understood. So, see, there's other part of this question, which is there's a significant role of AI and overall bidding strategy in targeting your audience. And as a marketer who has been running Google Ad for quite some time, though not as expert as you are, uh, I think there are many levers that have already taken away, and there might be very few left with the person who is managing the ads. So, do you think, is there a way to keep some tab on who you target and how do you reach to them? And if there is something that you can do about getting better conversions with the current strategy that Google is like kind of evolving, PMAX, demand gen, and everything else.
Yes, change is the only constant. More and more AI is the only constant. So, as Google Ads practitioners, there are really three core things that I recommend focusing on because these are things that you can control and that AI cannot do for you, but are required if you want the AI to work well for you. And so, the first, of course, is conversion tracking, accurate conversion tracking. If you're an e commerce business, that's easy. If you're a lead generation business, that's much more difficult. So if you are not using some kind of offline conversion tracking, smart bidding won't work as well for you. Automated targeting won't work as well for you, not because Google is bad, but because you're not giving Google what it needs in order to give you what you need. So the conversion tracking piece is key, full funnel conversion tracking. The next piece is customer data. Even if you aren't eligible to use Customer Match because you haven't spent enough money or don't have enough account history, just having that customer list in your account helps because all of your smart bidding algorithms will use it as a signal. If you're using optimized targeting or performance max campaigns, they will use a customer list as a signal, even if you don't put it in the audience signal. So just by existing in your account, your customer data helps your campaigns perform better. So that's the second piece. Even small businesses, even new accounts should absolutely be leveraging Customer Match. And then the third piece that I emphasize, because Google Ads practitioners, we're not good at this, is the ad creative. We are so used to an era where you can just pick your keywords, the ad shows up, and boom, you make money. It's a lot more competitive now. Consumers are a lot more savvy now. So your ad text, your ad imagery, your ad video is like the most important determinant of success, assuming you have conversion tracking in place. And that's the part where AI can assist us, but AI generated content is just not there yet at scale. Whereas AI bidding, like, yes, smart bidding, 99.9% will win. So that's the third place. So I'm really encouraging my coaching clients and course members and all Google Ads practitioners to really brush up on your creative skills, because that's how you can really get an edge. Because at its core, Google makes money when people click on ads. So as much as people say, oh, Google's trying to cheat us, and no, Google's so evil, like, no, Google just wants to make money. So you can work with Google so you make money too. Give Google great creative that people click on so Google makes money and you make money. Or give Google crappy creative and your CPCs will skyrocket and your CTR will go down and your ads won't show up as much. And you'll say, dang you, Google. But it's your fault, not Google's. So those are three key things to really focus on: conversion tracking, customer data, creative. Hopefully, they all start with the letter C. And really, just this mentality I encourage that if you give Google what it needs, it will give you what you need. You got to just work with that system if you want AI working for your business rather than against your business.
Understood. So most people have AI working against their business, and that is their like core pain point. You said you are already coaching so many people on how to run the right Google Ads the right way. What are some of the diagnostic methods you use to actually discover they are targeting the wrong audience?
What are some of the diagnostic measures I use?
Mm-hmm. Like some of how
Yeah,
do you
so
diagnose whether if I let's say if I come to you and say that, Jill, my Google ad is not working, and maybe I have some issues with the audience targeting. So where do you start when you have to diagnose that? Yes, this is where you are lacking.
where I start is not with the audiences. I
Mhm,
actually always start with the foundation of the account, the conversions and the conversion tracking, because
mhm,
so often, even if someone says, "Oh yeah, I have conversion tracking set up," no, they don't. This actually happened on Friday with my last coaching call before the weekend. It's a client I've been working with on one account, and I'd never seen their second account before. It wasn't part of our calls, and we looked at that second account for the first time. And I said, "How's your conversion tracking?" And they said, "I think I have it set up right." So we checked, and they had 20 different conversion actions set to primary,
mhm.
including things like driving directions. So,
Okay.
no, Google ads were not performing well, not because Google was wrong, but because they hadn't given it the right conversion data. So, no matter what, we always have to start there, because if the conversion data is not there, then Google doesn't know if it's doing a good job or not, and you don't know if it's doing a good job or not. From there, before I dive right into the audiences or the keywords or the ads, I like to look at the campaign level metrics and see what kind of story they tell. Your CPC tells a story if it's too low, if it's too high. Your click through rate tells a story. Your impression share tells a story. And so, because of my decade of experience, I have a combination of experience and then the intuition that comes with that of what I think I might find going into the campaign. And so I find it helpful first, because this is a strategy I want my clients to learn as well. Let's look at what the metrics are telling us at the campaign level. And based on that, let's hypothesize about what we're going to find in the campaign and what we'll need to do next. And that way, we know where to start. Like, for example, if we see that our click through rate and our CPC looks solid, but then conversion rate drops off a cliff, that suggests a really different starting place than if we have hundreds of thousands of impressions and a super low click through rate and a high CPC. That tells us a completely different starting place. So, those metrics, it's kind of like Sherlock Holmes. Those are the clues we get at the beginning that will help us decide where we might want to focus. And then, based on what we find there, we'll dive into the audiences. Often optimized targeting is turned on, and usually we want that turned off. We'll dive into the keywords, where the number of keywords and match types are often an issue. We'll dive into the search terms report. Lots of stuff to unpack there
Yeah.
usually. And then I always like to land looking at the actual creative, the ads, before an initial call with a new client is up. But there could be hundreds of different things to optimize in a Google Ads account. And it's that metrics and data at the top level that helps us find where to focus.
Understood. So I think there's one more problem with people who are running Google Ads. Like traditionally, we have been the boring people. We don't understand the creative. Our focus has been only on the text part, like placing the keyword at the right place and maybe expecting some results. So, how do you really get creative? Like now, Google is also demanding us to become creative and maybe. come up with some great creatives and stories. So how do you become a storyteller overnight? Is it really that simple? Can you use AI for your help, or is there any way to actually come up with the right creatives? What kind of research you have to do in order to come up with the creatives that you need? What is your process in that case?
It's definitely not something to build overnight, but it's something I've been working on. And so, what I would share, the first step, which again, something not enough Google Ads practitioners do, is remember that we're marketing to humans. Like, we're not marketing to keywords. We're not marketing to audiences. We're not just writing text ads. There are humans on the other end, just like us, who
Yeah.
are busy and stressed and overwhelmed and all these things. And so I find that just reminding yourself of the human on the other end is the first step, because as media buyers, we're often so removed from that. The next thing I would suggest is focus on your text skills first, because there's no design tools or photography or editing, or it's text, right? And so that's a place where AI can absolutely assist you, but should not replace you, because AI doesn't have judgment. So don't just go to ChatGPT and say, I sell dog food, come up with 10 Google Ads headlines. No, like, give it more context. If you can't list 3 reasons why your dog food is better than the competitor's dog food, then ChatGPT won't be able to help you write a good headline. So after you remember the human, what that then leads you to is really marketing 101, which again, I think a lot of us skip. And I think a great way to learn that is to follow people in the organic marketing space. People who talk about Instagram marketing or SEO or, TikTok marketing, not because as Google Ads practitioners, you need to market in those places, but because when you are an organic content creator, you can't pay to have your content show up. You need to earn it by
Yeah.
getting attention. And so I find those organic content creators are really good at that. So that's another way that I've improved my own skills, is by following a lot of people who are Google Ads experts, sure, but then also following a lot of people in SEO, Instagram, and TikTok. And that has helped me get much better at my own creative skills, and then knowing how I can use AI to help me try to achieve similar results. So that's where I'd start.
Understood. So let's also talk about conversion tracking, because you highlighted that it's one of the important field that marketers have to focus. What is the right conversion tracking stack? Let's talk about D2C first. What should you be definitely tracking, and what is the right
Purchases.
man? Yeah, purchases, of course. Apart from
And however you
purchases,
can.
yeah,
There's this Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager. I don't care. Just have conversion tracking. I think a lot of people, especially beginners, they're like, oh, I don't know how to use Google Tag Manager and I don't know how to use e-commerce. So they just have nothing. Nothing's not an option. Better to have something than nothing. So for e-commerce businesses, you want to be tracking purchases. It's really helpful to also be tracking add to carts and begin checkouts, because even if you don't use those as a primary conversion action, that data can be really indicative. It's one of the things I'll look at in an account, for example, is maybe there's a campaign that's not converting well, not getting a lot of purchases. Why? So if we can see, well, are people even adding to cart and then not purchasing? Or are a lot of people clicking on this campaign and not even adding anything to their cart, in which case they couldn't purchase? So that's one of the key ways you can diagnose, is there potentially a Google Ads issue where we're sending the wrong people to the website? Or is there just a website issue where we're sending the right people and the website is not designed well to convert? So I'd say purchases required. If you can also track add to cart and begin checkout, that's really helpful from a data perspective. And if you use a platform like Shopify, it syncs beautifully with Google Ads and does that for you.
understood. So the other part of conversion tracking, which is for B2B marketers, people who are more on the lead gen side, and everyone, almost everyone I speak to, talk about offline conversions and like sharing data with Google, customer match, and everything. But I think there are so many marketers who haven't been able to figure out the right way. It's like either you don't have the syncing of data properly, or even if you have that, then you don't know how to build the custom audience out of that. There are so many issues when it comes to B2B lead generation with Google Ads. So let's speak about that a little bit. It has been become more complicated, because earlier we knew that there is some control over the keywords that we have, and maybe somebody would land with a particular keyword which is in phrase or exact match, will somehow be able to be called a good lead from my sales team, because then I'll be able to show that yes, this guy was searching exactly this solution and now he landed into our funnel. That means he's a good customer or expected to be a good lead. Now that is changing because there are so many new things. Everyone is not coming by searching keywords. How do you actually track the conversion in the right way? And then how do you build up the audience so that you get the right leads, right MQLs or SQL, however you define it?
There are a ton of different tactics to do this, but at the end of the day, uh, Google can only give you the end results you want if you tell Google what those results are. So let me explain. A typical process is on your website, people will fill out a form. Then maybe your sales team will call that person. Over a course of calls, they either become a customer or don't become a customer, right? So if all you're telling Google is the form fill and then that's it, Google will get you a ton of form fills. And then what might happen is, oh my gosh, I'm getting a ton of spam. Google's doing a bad job. It's like, no, you did a bad job. Google's doing an excellent job. It figured out the best way to get people to fill out that form, bots, right? So that's why it's really important when I say you have to give Google what you want. So if what you want is an end purchase, then you need to feed that data back to Google about who actually became a purchaser and who didn't. It's very complicated to do so. So if you can't do that, fair enough. But then at the end of the day, we'll be limited in what we can do in Google Ads. There's a ton of audience targeting and keyword targeting and negatives, and there's all kinds of things we can do to try to get as close as possible. But it's all going to be actually more complicated than just setting up the offline conversion tracking in the first place. So, example, audience exclusions, like that can be a helpful way to if you're only tracking the form fill, to try to narrow. So maybe you have certain keywords you like, right? But even with exact match, other kind of stuff comes in. So you can either add audiences or exclude audiences. Maybe if you're a home services business, for your search campaign, you add an exclusion for people who rent their homes. Because if they're a renter, they're not going to buy those things.
Yeah,
Maybe if you're in the B2B space and you sell accounting software, but only for large corporations, then you add a detailed demographics on targeting only for people who work at large employers. So there are, and these are just two examples. There's many different ways you can use audiences to help that process. But still, at the end of the day, Google Ads is literal. It will do exactly what you tell it to do, and it will try to find the easiest shortcuts to do so because that's what algorithms do. So if you're not feeding that offline data back into it, you are making your job more difficult and making Google's job more difficult.
okay. So I think we have been in the episode for almost 30 minutes. Now let's go to the conclusion part and let's discuss some of the tips or maybe strategies that you want people to follow when they are building their audience. Like you answered this question initially, but let's revisit the like initial checklist that everyone should follow before they actually get into the dashboard and start building their audience.
So before you start building any campaign, whether it's a Google Ads campaign, a Meta Ads campaign, an SEO campaign, the first thing you need to figure out is who are you trying to reach? And typically in Google Ads, we think of that in terms of what are they searching for? And so,
Mhm.
while what are they searching for is absolutely one tool you can use, you also want to think about the other ways you can potentially reach them through content targeting, the kind of websites, apps, or videos they engage with, and then through audience targeting, the kinds of behaviors they have online and what that suggests about the kind of person they are. Then you can put all these different pieces together and build out a variety of both audience and content targeting ways to reach that audience. But then don't forget about the very important step that comes next. Once you know who you want to reach, why should they want to engage with you? And that's where the creative comes into play, making sure your text, image, or video assets are tailored for that audience and clearly communicate why they should engage with your ad versus all the other ones they're inundated with every day.
Understood. So I think thank you so much for joining us, and I think we had a lovely chat so far. Anything you want to share as a concluding remark? Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. If you'd like to learn more about Google Ads with me, I publish the Inside Google Ads podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, everywhere for free every Thursday. So be sure to tune
And
in.
how can people purchase your book? Where is it available?
My book is available in ebook on Google Play and in
Mhm.
paperback and ebook on Amazon.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll also add the link for anyone who is interested in purchasing the book. It will be
Thank
available
you.
in the YouTube description.
You can
Thank you
just
so
include the link.
much.
It's jill.ca/book,
Mhm.
JYLL.ca/book, and then it links to the book in all different countries, every format, everything people need to know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to us so far. And thank you, Jill, for joining us today. Do
Thank you
make
for
sure
having
you
me.
subscribe to the 10x Marketer podcast before you leave. Thank you so much and take care.